Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SnapRefund Podcast. My name is Anise Taylor,
And I'm Cody Eddings.
and we are back with another great episode right here on the SnapRefund Podcast. Today, we have a special guest, and that guest is Michelle Raue. Michelle has over 30 years of experience in property and casualty insurance. She has led claims operations at major carriers, scaled Lyft's rideshare claims organization from the ground up, and now drives transformation at Preferred Mutual through data analytics and technology. She is also a member of NAMIC's AI working group, where she serves on the advisory board for InsurTech Connect and mentors rising talent in the insurance industry, like myself included. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so excited to have Michelle Raue on this show. Let's give it up for Michelle. Thank you so much
Maybe.
for joining us, Michelle. We really appreciate it. Just jumping into things, I'd like to know what originally drew you to the world of claims and what has kept you motivated for 3 decades to stay in the business?
Um, well, like most people, I fell into insurance. I didn't have any idea what claims people did. I was working for a savings and loan that got closed down by the federal government. And the girl next to me's father happened to be a state farm agent. And she said, let's go apply for claims jobs. And I'm like, what do claims jobs? What do people who do claims do? And I had no idea. I didn't, I'd paid for insurance, but I didn't know what happened when you had an accident and that there were actually people out there that handled those things. And so I just went, applied, and got a job mostly because I needed a paycheck. But then I got in and realized a few things. First, it's super fun, right? There's no stories like claim stories. And you are really helping people when I know it sounds corny, but when they need it the most, right? I mean, I've stood on the slab of somebody's house that has burned to the ground. You're the only person between them and getting their life back together. And that is a big deal. And it's important for me to make a difference in what I do. And I've always felt like in the claims world, you absolutely make a difference every day.
That's well said. So at Lyft, you built their claims organization from the ground up. That's an interesting environment for insurance because it's both, a startup, but also one that's doing things in a highly regulated space. So what was the biggest challenge, and were there any breakthrough moments at your time there?
Um, that was, you know, really, really interesting. Here's this group, these two guys that created an app thinking people, are going to share rides and it's going to help the world have less traffic and all that stuff. But they never realized they'd be the sixth largest commercial auto insurer in the country when they started. And it got to a point where, insurance and claims were their single largest cost. And they had no idea what to do with it. I mean, it was like, they're brilliant people and they're brilliant in a certain space, but they had no idea what to do in the insurance world. And especially with these claims that were just kept piling up because every state put in these laws and gave them huge limits. And, it just turned into a nightmare. And that's when they started going out into the industry and saying, we got to find somebody to help us figure out how to do this. But the biggest challenge was what just how do you set this up, because what we had to identify, what is Lyft's DNA, like what do they want to be? Do they want to be the sixth largest insurance carrier in the country? No, they want to be a rideshare app. So how do you marry those two where you've got this huge cost in their environment, but they don't want to own that themselves, like it's not their DNA to be an insurance company. So we had to figure out how we could structure it so that we could partner with folks to make sure that things got handled appropriately. We kind of had to. It was like a three-legged stool because they wanted to own the relationship with the drivers, and that's very important to them. So we decided to keep the F&OL piece inside where the drivers could report losses to Lyft directly. We get the information and then find a partner to move it to. But that all figuring out all of that was the biggest thing we had to tackle.
Well, It's interesting that you say that because it seems like from working with like traditional insurance carriers and then going in a company like Lyft, you've really seen a lot. You've seen a lot of the changes. What would you say when it comes to claims operation has changed the most since you started? And what are some of the things that haven't changed at all?
Um, it's interesting. I mean, we have automated a lot, and we have gone from when I started, I actually learned how to take statements, written statements, where you would go in and you would have somebody give you a statement and you'd write it down. We had tape recorders, but it was all of the old claims folks thinking that the best way to learn it was to actually write it down so you could pay attention to what people were saying. And then, so, and we had paper files and we had all, handwritten reports and all that stuff. And so the automation that has come with, having paperless files and being able to automate more and more has improved our ability to handle things more efficiently. But I will say that back then we were customer facing much more, and so when I started at State Farm. I said we had claims offices in every city where we meet. One of my goals was to actually meet the people in person within so many days, right? And I handled injury claims, and that kind of by automating the stuff and moving things to regional big super hubs and things, we've kind of lost that connection with the people, and you can see it. I mean, we have a bad reputation now because we're not as customer facing as we used to be.
That's a great segue into another question, which is how do you ensure that innovation in the claim sphere stays customer focused and not just tech focused?
Yeah. And I think it's really easy. And one of the things that scares me about all the new tech coming out is that we use it the wrong way. Um, my philosophy personally and how we kind of look at things at where I am today is how to is this tool going to help us become more efficient so that the person, the claims person, can spend more time with the customer? Because even in surveys and everything, the pain point is always I didn't know what to expect next. Somebody's had a loss. They've been paying for insurance for years, right? They just write this check every month or every 6 months, and it's kind of, ugh, I don't like paying this. I don't know why I pay this, and then they have a loss, and that's probably the only loss they're going to have, right? Most people don't have a bunch of losses in their lifetime. They have one or two, and they have no idea what to expect. And they may report their loss on a phone or through a digital, an interface on their computer and not talk to a person. So they don't, it's like, and they get a message that says so and so is going to call you, and they end up playing phone tag, and they just don't ever get that communication that they need. And that's where we see, all the time we could do better there. And my hope is that all of the technology that's coming out that takes away all of the rote things that we do can leave us with the ability to talk to people more. I hope that we don't use this as FTE savings, but we use it as the ability to save time to spend it with the customers, because that's the only way we actually win in this industry.
It's really interesting because it sounds like as you understand, as you go through the process of just being in the space, you learn more and more about what happened, what's going to happen, and really what makes the industry work the way that it does. Now that you're at Preferred Mutual and you're overleading a lot of this core replacement, system replacement, what advice do you give leaders before starting a project like that others can learn from you for?
Yeah. So we're replacing all the guts of the company, policy, claims, billing system, everything. And it's a huge project, and it's taking, we're not a company with a bunch of folks. And so everybody's contributing. But one of the biggest pieces is first we started early. Like before we even went to RFP, we were pretty clear on our requirements and what we needed, and what we were trying to solve. And then when we did go out to market, we included all of the people who were going to be affected by the change. So I don't sit and handle claims every day. So I'm not the one that needs to evaluate a system that we're going to use. I need to get my claims folks in the room and to see those demos and say, this one will work great. This won't work because of X. And so we did that. We included, lots and lots of line people across the company in those initial demonstrations, and they picked the winner, right? I mean, it wasn't us as leaders saying, we're getting this system, we're going to plug it in and y'all are going to use it. It was a grassroots kind of effort. And I think that is what helped us tremendously. And I recommend that to anybody out there. Don't get top down systems and say, you're going to do this. It's not you that's using the tool.
That makes a lot of sense. It's always kind of mind-blowing to me how many systems are still in use today at legacy carriers that came from those top-down decisions that were disparate from the stakeholders back then. And you see, it shows the companies that really include everyone in the value chain for the parts that they'll touch are the ones that really not only are better places to work at, but usually have the best end relationship and result with the policyholders. So I'm sure it'll shine through for preferred too. As part of
Right.
Nick's AI working group, what opportunities do you see for AI in claims, if any, and what risks are you cautious about?
Yeah, well, the NAMIC AI working group is more regulation focused. It's like looking at all the regulations that are going in by state. And unfortunately, we're not going to get a national regulation. We're going to have, like we do all the insurance laws of every state. Every state is going to have different AI regulations. And that's, right now, we're in our infancy and there is none. And so there's going to be a lot of disruption, I think, because stuff's getting built now without considering this regulation. But aside from that, um, I, we see a lot of AI popping up, and a lot of people use the term AI, and that's not what it is. I mean, it's like, let's just throw AI on our name, and it's going to get us some attention. But so the real definition of it is kind of confusing. But you're also seeing very, very spot solutions, like they'll do a limited amount of stuff. And so what I see now is like a lot of leaders are going out there and just pulling things in and saying, because it's AI and my boss is asking me to get AI and we'll save efficiencies and do this and that. What's lacking is, like, how is it working in an ecosystem? We haven't come to the point where we're getting all of that stuff together and figuring out how they all work together. Um, so I think that's one thing that's happening.
For the people at home that haven't heard of NAMIC, can you tell us a little bit about NAMIC?
It's the National Association of Mutual Insurance Carriers. And it so it's a large organization that does a lot of lobbying, because most of the mutual carriers across the country are very small and regional, right? But what people don't realize is it's you've got the state farms, you've got the progressives and the big wigs who do commercials every Sunday on the football games, but majority of the country is insured by a bunch of smaller mutual carriers or smaller regional carriers, and we don't have the same, like, buying power or impact that some of these big ones can have their own lobbyists and whatever. And so we kind of accumulate or gather together under these bigger umbrellas, and that's what NAMIC is. But there's 1,500 mutual carriers in this country. That's a lot of policies written to smaller mutual carriers that know a region. I mean, we only write in the Northeast. We know the Northeast. We live where our agents live and know that community, and it usually is just a much better relationship.
It makes sense. speaking of relationships, you've been really active on LinkedIn. I love seeing your posts. Talk a bit about what mentoring and talent development mean to you. And it seems like they're a pretty big part of your professional and personal life. And what is it that inspires you to do that?
Um, well, biggest aspiration is we are an aging industry. I mean, there's a whole group of us that are my age, and the statistics are kind of horrific that 50% of us are going to retire in the next 10 years, and we aren't replacing we're not, insurance is not sexy to most of these Gen Z folks. They think it's boring. They believe the ads that Morgan and Morgan put out there that we're bad, horrible people, and we, just take their money and we're never there when people need us. And they want to go work in, startups and tech companies and things that sound much cooler. And so my effort is to try to get out there and convince folks that we, are a great industry to work in, and B, once they get in, to provide them some kind of wisdom. I didn't get all this gray hair for nothing. I have learned a lot along the way, and I'm just trying to give back. I want to leave the place a little better than I found it.
Yeah, I love that. And, Michelle, you really do because, we've had so many conversations, and every time that I've left a conversation with you, I left smarter. You've put me onto something that I just didn't think about it, and I really appreciate you for that. What strategies have you found to be the most effective with keeping your team motivated as you've been working throughout your career?
um, I mean, one of the things that I've always tried to do with my teams is, have we all feel like we're building the same things. It's or rowing in the same direction, right? I mean, it's really important to have folks understand how what we do every day affects the customers, affects, what our combined ratio ends up being, just the whole ecosystem of insurance. One of the great things in the insurance world is that what's good for the customer is good for the company. So the faster you can handle a claim, it's great for the customer, it's cheaper for the company, everybody wins. And so just teaching them those things and how to tie one thing to the other has always been very helpful in getting them motivated to, do more and go further.
So as you look ahead, what excites you most about the insurtech innovation that's out there in the industry?
I'm really fascinated with everything that's going on right now. I mean, the leaps that we've made in the last few years on what is possible is amazing to me. And I've always been, kind of a disruptor. Am I'm, I'm not a fast follower, so to speak. I mean, I haven't always had the resources to go first, but I am willing to try stuff that comes out that is just, really interesting to me. You're not going to break anything. If it doesn't work, you go another direction. But, the of course the LLMs and the AIs, that capability of being able to take a loss and direct people where they need to go is huge, because it's claims is not rocket science. It's the two things drive it: how fast did you do it, and what was your cost, right? And the how fast did you do it drives your cost. And so anything you can do to make the claim more efficient is better for everybody. The customer gets it done better, faster. They get their checks, they get it right. The company also, the faster you do it, claims don't age like fine wines, they age like dynamite. So the older a claim is, the worse, the more volatile it is, it's going to cost you more money. But you want to get it right. And so there's all these opportunities to be more efficient with the tools that are coming out, be more succinct. I mean, it provides a lot of, ability to get it right. The future of agentic AI is fascinating to me. I think we've only scratched the surface, but I think we're all going to have our own personal AI agents in 10 years, and that ability to have a, a tech tool that helps schedule things and um, get things moving for you is tremendous. I'm really excited about all of it. But I will go back to the fact that we've got to figure out how to get it to work in a whole ecosystem. We can't afford just to buy pieces that do this and then this and then this, and none of them are linked together, and you lose efficiency there.
Yeah, well, a lot of these AI companies, they're startups really, and there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
these young founders that are coming into the space and looking to partner with insurers as they're building. What advice would you give those founders that are trying to partner with insurers?
Two things that I usually see folks miss on is, first, they don't realize how that we are in the most regulated industry in the world. Like the amount of regulation that faces insurance companies is huge, and you know, startup folks don't ever understand that. And second, it's folks that have never been in the space and want to come in and say, I think they've already solved this problem, and they haven't talked to anybody in the real world about the problem. Um, so I got chased at a conference one time for a girl that she startup, and she building a policy system, and I'm like, we're in the middle of a launch with one of the big policy system companies, and she just wanted me to ditch it, and she'd never talked to me. She didn't know anything about our problems or what we're trying to solve, but she had just built this solution that she was super confident that I should ditch a $28 million install and go with her. But I think that there's so much over aggression to
Mhm.
sign folks up that they don't ever like sit down and say, what are your problems? What are you facing? And then figure out the solution, instead of figuring out the solution and then bringing it to me and tell me it's going to solve something that I'm not trying to solve for.
Yeah, I will say, as a startup founder, it is probably the hardest, if not one of the hardest industries to sell into. And that is a tough place to be as an industry because, number one, it's hard for innovation to happen if the companies that try to innovate can't outlast the really long sales cycles. But number two, it's just less exciting of a world to be in where things don't get to improve and change. So it really
Yeah.
requires startup founders to have that nuance and understand the industry really well to be able to do more of a collaborative, consultative approach as opposed to just like, hey, we need runway, like please buy our stuff because
Yeah.
it definitely comes through that way. Uh,
Yeah. And I mean, it's the best people I've dealt with are the ones that are like, what are you dealing with? And listen, then they listen, and then they're like, okay. And maybe their product doesn't solve it yet. And they could say, well, maybe we can tweak this and it will work or something.
100%. So if we fast forward 5 years from now, what does great claim service mean in 2030?
Well, my sincere hope is that like I said earlier, we use the AI to take away all of the mundane things that keep claim reps and anybody in insurance, underwriters, anybody that needs to be forward facing, takes that away from the human and allows us to be more human. Because I am a firm believer that the future does not exist where AI handles claims, because when people have had a loss, they want somebody, a person, a human, to hear that they have had a loss, right? It's one of the biggest deals of their whole life, and they want to tell somebody about it. And we have to still be there to be that somebody. And I hope that we don't use all of the tools and technology that are emerging to do away with the people side of it, because then the plaintiff bar just keeps on winning, and we are the bad guys because we don't ever talk to people and we don't explain things. We're the worst. We're our own worst enemy sometimes.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I think over time and just having companies like ours as an insure tech, just really leading the way with that transformation. We're always going to make sure that we include that human element as well. And that's what we're excited. So we're wrapping up this podcast. One of the things that we like to do is kind of do a quick fire closing question. So I'm going to ask you a question and then, feel free to just answer as quick as possible. Book or podcast you'd recommend to insurance leaders?
So, given that I have talked a lot about making AI giving us the ability to be more human, there's a book called Irreplaceable by Pascal Bornet. I don't know if I say his last name right, but wonderful book about, he calls it humanics, I think, how AI turns us into more human people. And I thought that was super fascinating. I really enjoyed it.
I'll have to check that one out. What's the best piece of career advice you've ever received?
Um, so many years ago, I had a boss who told me that make sure that every decision you make has the customer first.
Mm.
And I think that was huge because we forget that so much. But I try to look at everything through the lens of, we are here to serve a customer who paid for a policy. And so every decision that we make should keep that in mind.
I like that one. If there's one change you'd like to see in the insurance industry happen faster, what would that be?
I would like for us to tell our story better. I would love for us to get out in front of this negativity and start actually talking to our customers, explaining why their premiums are going up, explaining how all the legal tort explosion is affecting their pocketbooks, and what they can do to help, the reason, what inflation does to their premiums. I think we're terrible, terrible advocates for ourselves. And I would hope that we figure out how to do a better job at that.
Well, I know for sure you're one of the people that's leading the charge with getting out there and talking to the industry. I love watching you on LinkedIn, everything that you do. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us on the Snap Refund Podcast. We really appreciate you taking this time. And we look forward to seeing you as you continue to grow and do all the amazing things that you're doing at Preferred Mutual.
Yeah, you guys too. Y'all are doing a great thing out there.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to the Snap Refund Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this show and we will catch you later. Take care.
Peace.